I'm second generation American. My grandmother and grandfather came through Ellis Island on my mother's side, from Germany and from Poland. On my father's side, my grandparents came from Trinidad and Barbados. So, my grandparents being first generation and being immigrants, at that time, say Ellis Island, that's like 1920s. And so many of the immigrants that came into the country at that time were trying to assimilate and be more Americanized. So my mother wasn't taught Polish and German in the house because you needed to speak English. And my Caribbean family tried very hard to not have an accent. So growing up in those environments, it was even a big deal for my grandparents on my mom's side to get together, being German and Polish. See, he was Jewish and she was Catholic. That was not something that was done back then. Very big deal. But they met each other, they saw each other from across the room at a dance and fell in love. Same thing with my parents when they met in the 60s. In fact, when my parents got together, it was illegal for interracial marriages to exist in this country. So when I was a kid growing up with my sister, I didn't know that there were other interracial kids. I just didn't know that that was a thing, because I do know that my experience with my own family on both the white side and the black side of the family was very much othering. You don't belong. You're not like us. You're not black enough. You're not like us. So my sister and I always felt like we didn't fit in. And I feel like, in many ways, that was actually an interesting way to grow up, because so much in our society is like that. Whether you look like the person who's making the rules or who decide what is in fashion or not. So growing up with this sort of experience, let's just say I was a little more sensitive than anyone else. But I would get these feelings of, or I can read the room, whether maybe my presence was not as welcome there as you would like to think. But you internalize that. And over time, you might get angry, you might feel frustrated, you might even make yourself sick. When I discovered that I had this ability to make these things disappear by creating art, by doing something as simple as making this rope, and you'll see there's lots of ropes in this room, I knew that that was something I needed to do for myself, so that I wouldn't feel this frustration of feeling other, feeling like I didn't belong. So in the process of making, I've made a series of works in here to help dispose of that. See, when I'm making the rope, I don't feel like I don't belong. I don't feel like I'm not valued. I feel like I put all of that into this, and when it sits over there, it's over there, and it doesn't belong to me anymore. So you'll see that there's these shopping carts. These are emotional baggage carts. These are vessels to get rid of these things. Now, I have all the zip ties on here. I use zip ties as a form of armor and protection. But I have the zip ties here so that you can put the baggage in here. So let's say there's something that's bothering you, something that you're like, this person's gossiping about me or said something about me, or makes me feel less than. You're invited to interact with her. Yes, you can touch it. See, those are the don't touch, but these are the ones that you can really kind of get in and touch. But see, the thing is, when you put those things in here, now it's over here. And now it doesn't have to belong to you anymore. That's the part of the transformation. So when I look at these ropes here that I've done, these are about black ballerinas. When I was growing up in the 70s, I wanted to be a ballerina too. But the school was like, yeah, no, you're going to do jazz tap. And there really weren't other ballerinas. There wasn't like a Misty Copeland that we can see now. I didn't have those role models. So I didn't get the tap shoes. I mean, I think it's really interesting because the reason why I put these ribbons in here, these pieces, this is the color of what the shoes look like. See, the instructor didn't want me in the class because I was not going to fit the aesthetic, is what I was told. But it's so interesting. Notice how the color is very similar to my own. And I think it's interesting how people look at and decide what color belongs and which one doesn't. And in fact, I actually did match the shoes. I just didn't make this aesthetic of what the other young girls looked like in the class. So I made this piece as a tribute to all the young ladies that, of any color, but particularly girls that are brown and black, that they can be ballerinas. That anyone that has told you you can't do it, you actually can. So all these works in here are really about that kind of conversation. This is another emotional baggage card, and you'll see that it is holding the trauma on the inside, but this deals with, me as a child, the teddy bears. My father would always give me teddy bears, and my dad is 75, and I still get teddy bears from him. And I take them all and I wrap them up because I want to save all those memories and moments, because there'll be a time when he's no longer here, but I want to mummify that so I can keep those memories. And so if we keep moving along this wall, you can see larger ropes similar to what we're making. Now these ropes were made with machines because there's thousands of fibers, right? This is a pretty thick rope, but then embellished and wrapped and knotted using a bunch of different macrame type knots that I learned. Again, in the making of this, coming out of, this is the series I Am My Hair, this came from people touching my hair without asking permission first. Happens all the time. Now you would think because of the pandemic, when they're stand 6 feet, right, that there would, no. It's like everyone forgot that 6 feet. Whenever I'm riding the train in New York City, someone comes right up to me and has hands in my hair. Oh, I'm sorry, did I bother you? Why are you petting me like a dog? Why are you fetishizing me? So I made this whole series with the ropes to really kind of release that conversation. And I think it's important to be able to have those kind of conversations, because often when I react to someone who's petting me like a dog on the train, I come off like I'm the aggressor because I'm unhappy about it. They're like, oh, well, it wasn't a big deal. Well, it's a big deal for me. So I've made these ropes, and I do these workshops with the making of the ropes so that we can have this conversation about what is okay and not okay. Or how does each individual get to define their own boundaries? You get to say. Someone else does not define that for you. So when you look at these ropes, I made these ropes with other people that I invited into my studio. So these each are 100 feet in length, and there were like, I don't know, as many people as you right now working with me on those ropes. So the ropes are really long so that you're not tugging from the next person. And what's so interesting is in the making of the rope and everyone talking and feeling it, when I'm talking about my own relationship to my hair, that over that course of that year, I changed my hair a number of different times. I used to dye my hair. So I only recently started to let my hair go gray. See, when I dyed my hair black, people would, now I get the seat on the train, right? So they go, oh, ma'am. I'm like, ma'am. Oh, do you want to sit? Oh, thank you. So I get to sit with the gray hair. Or before I let my hair go lock, I would have to press my hair straight if I wanted to be actually heard in meetings when I was on my corporate job. See, if I wore my hair natural and there was all of these, be proud of your natural hair. But when I'm in corporate America, being proud of my natural hair really wasn't an option because no one would listen in the meetings. So I tested all these different styles. I would wear different types of wigs and crochet with the hair. I wore braids, and each time I would find that people would treat me differently based on how I wore my hair. And so this series actually is talking about all of that. So you'll see with the fringe hanging out, or different embellishments, or how you might braid your hair and put flowers in your hair. All of that is a reflection of how people's reactions would be different based on how I chose to wear my hair. So some of you might find, especially if you wear your hair covered, people are making assumptions about you. They don't know you or your story. So it's important for you to speak up. Your voice is valid and should be heard, and no one will know your story if you don't share it. So that's what's important. That's what's important about art for me. This is why I do it, right? That I'm making these things because there's stories I'm putting into these objects that I want to, one, memorialize, but put over there. This particular card was the very first emotional baggage card, and it's all related to the relationships with the people I lost during the pandemic. I started this card while I was making my Christmas card list. And I looked at my previous year's list, and as I was going through, just to make sure I had all the right addresses, I had 13 names I had to take off that list because they all died from the pandemic. And I realized I hadn't properly mourned. There were no funerals. This was early on, people were really stuck in their houses and not going out. And I realized that I was carrying a lot of baggage to not having been able to say goodbye to people who were close to me. I said goodbye to all of them in this card. And I left the top open and not covered with the zip ties because there are still moments that come up. Like when someone you love has passed, do you take them out of your phone? See, I haven't taken any of them out of my phone, but occasionally I'm scrolling through and I'll have a moment where I'm like, oh, I want to call Javiera. And I pull her number up, but that's not her number. And like how, there's no calling Javiera. Well, I can call Javiera by interacting with the card or the memories that we have or going on Facebook and looking at our old pictures and things like that. So, this has a lot of deep emotional meaning for me because I'm still processing the past. And it's 3 years now, and I'm still processing it. I mean, there's something to be said about going to a funeral, right? When you see the body lowered into the ground, that's a pretty final moment. Many of us did not have that experience during the pandemic. I think probably all of us lost somebody. And every time I would see a shopping cart, I would see a loom. I would see the warp and the weft, and I would say, I have to weave on that, I have to weave on that. And frankly, my husband was like, don't bring that dirty stuff into the house. And he went away for the weekend. So that's where that cart came from. I saw it was right in front of my building, and I was like, he's not here, I'm bringing it inside. And I happened to have, I didn't like the silver, and whenever you go to the supermarket, the wheels never work, right? The cart's going, yes. I was like, oh, WD-40s. I took the wheels off and I cleaned them up, and I was like, ooh, now they work great. And then I was like, ooh, it needs to be gold. Well, I'm Caribbean. I can't help anything gold and sparkly and sequins. Oh my God. I'm obsessed. So I spray painted the cart, and then I was like, oh, they all need to be that color. That's why they're all spray painted gold, with the exception of that. That's new, to put in a different color outside of the gold. I decided to weave because when I'm making the ropes, it made me feel better. And when I was really, it disappears, those conversations, right? So this is mindless. I'm sitting here making this rope right now. I'm having this conversation with you. It makes the things that might come up and trigger me, that make painful, makes them disappear. So I said, well, what if I weave all the pain of the people I lost into this cart? What would happen? And you know what happened? It was something that I didn't expect. Because when I finished and pushed the cart away, something lifted. You ever do yoga? See, I try to do yoga, and I can never, they're like, lift from your head. And I'm like, I can't lift from my head. You can feel your spirit lift from your body. I'm like, I can never do that. And that's exactly what happened when I pushed the cart away. I was like, what just happened? And now it's like, I posted on Instagram about it, and the next day someone showed up and was like, I got a shopping cart for you to weave on. That was an amazing story you told. And I started on the next one. Well, 3 years later, I'm still making these shopping carts because every single time I finish one and push it away, I get that lift from my head. That thing I can't actually make happen in yoga happens when I make this. So, people say, when are you going to stop working on shopping carts? Never. Because that feeling of lifting from my head, whatever it is that was there on the inside, that is now over here, does not live within me anymore. And that feels really good. I want that for everybody. Everyone, especially the people who are driving the car and cut you off and they're like, arr! I'm like, oh yeah, you need to weave on the shopping cart. You obviously need to figure out how to lift from your head. I don't know how to do it in yoga, but I do know how to do it with this and making this and using my hands and being intentional about putting the things that are bothering me into these spaces. So if you guys want to come and take a look at some of these other ropes, I mean, that's 200 feet of rope, and probably, I don't know how many things, probably over 30 skeins of yarn are knotted into this. And again, this is all about people touching hair. Yes, you're allowed to touch. I love the irony of having this type of work in a white box environment, like in a gallery or in a museum space, where you're generally not allowed to touch. It really kind of hits the point home, don't touch my hair. This plastic bags, all of those are newspaper bags from the New York Post. So if you read the New York Post, there's never any good news in it. It's like the murder, the weather, the sports, some politician doing something that they shouldn't have. So yeah, I decided to take all the bad news and transform it into joy. And these ropes here are like, so this is more sort of like a net that was wrapped with fabric and then knotted on top of it. It took easily a good 6 months to do. So when I start working on something, I work in series or something that's going to take a really long time. This particular one was really focused on my experience in corporate America about trying to climb to the top of that ladder. And you feel like you're getting to the top, and you fall right back down. So it's been a battle, and my battle is soon to be over. So I'll be retiring at the end of this year. No, definitely. Definitely. So yeah, this was over the period, 6 months that I was working on this, I was really struggling with the conversation about, can I retire? What does that look like? What more do I have to do? In my field, there's very few women, and even fewer women of color. And so I've been really fighting this battle and keep doing it because I know that the more I'm in the space, it makes room for people to come behind me. But there comes a point where you just have to say, I can't do it anymore. It's like, I've kicked the door open enough. So that's literally why it took so long for me to do. Like, I probably could have done it in much less time, but because again, everything I'm working through, I'm not just the making, I'm working through my emotions while I'm making it. This piece is about George Floyd. So it's literally someone dropped off all the CPAP tubes with breathing tubes, and I was like, yeah, I need that for this cart. And the lights are showing the breathing patterns. And then this weaving, every single piece of string and rope and paracord that's on this weaving was a time over the course of 1 year where someone said, "You're so articulate." But the way they said it was like a backhanded compliment. Like they were surprised. Like, "Oh, you figured that out all by yourself? How did you know to do that?" Or, "You speak white." Or, I mean, there's just so many variations of "you're so articulate." And so I started to literally, each time I had completed one of those conversations, I would just do the weaving until I was get that out. So there's a couple of different weaving techniques that are in here, but it wasn't about having it be this pretty thing. It was about taking on how I was feeling over here and putting it over there. Have you guys seen the movie, like, Picture of Dorian Gray? You know that? These young kids don't know. Older people know? Dorian Gray? Older film? Okay. I love older films. Well, in this film, the guy, he remained young and handsome, but all the ugly things, all the mean things, all the stuff that we're not proud of, goes on a painting. And so this painting that's hidden from view is this decrepit old person, while the main character remains handsome and beautiful. I was trying to remain beautiful and put that over all the garbage over there. And I left some strings hanging out because I literally was curating a show about microaggressions, which is the implicit bias in it. And I was doing the curator talk, and at the end of the curator talk, someone said, "You were so articulate." And I was like, oh my God, you just missed the whole point of this talk. And so I went in and wove this last piece, because I was going to leave this whole section out. I went in and wove this last piece right after that talk, because I was like, oh, it happened again. So I'll talk briefly about this and invite you all to share. So people might say things to you that are insensitive, or they didn't even know that they hurt your feelings. They didn't mean it, but it did hurt your feelings. So you write those things and you put them on this ribbon. So many people have already written, "Is it true Jews have horns?" What? It's crazy. My new boss. I'm a Christian. Are you a Christian? I'm sure the boss didn't think that that was hurtful, but yeah, for that person who received this message, that was hurtful for them. Why are we assuming that everyone's Christian? We have a lot of diversity just in this group here. I don't like it when people control me. Okay, I don't like it either. I went on to become a university professor. I can't see you as a teacher. So you can see very small statements that someone might make, which they're trying to understand how you're different, might be hurtful. That's what this project's about. So this is touring across the country right now. So I invite you, if there's anything that might be you're carrying around, you should be able to come closer and take a look at what's written on here, because you might see something, one, that you may have said to someone and didn't even realize it was hurtful. Doesn't make you a bad person. Now you can say, oh, okay, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to be much more mindful. Or you might see something on here that someone has said to you and feel seen because you didn't realize, maybe that made you feel bad, but You know, maybe I was socialized or came up in a family where I was told to swallow my feelings. See, I was raised in a family where you were not allowed to share your feelings, which is why it's so surprising that I share my feelings in the way in which I do. In fact, I don't think I would be who I am today had I not come up in a family where I was not allowed to share my feelings. So, please come closer and look at the bowl, come look at the ribbons. And if there's something that you might want to get rid of, like something someone said to you, go ahead and write it on the ribbon over there and tie it onto the neck. All right, take a look. There's lots of things on there.